Hello everyone. This video is made to commemorate the lives of the victims of the Triangle Shirtwaist fire, and especially one young man in particular. I recognize Joseph Wilson, a 22-year-old single poor man, soon to be married and missed by his fiancée Rose Blitzine. I recognize Joseph Wilson, a poor Jew that America failed. I recognize Joseph Wilson, a poor Russian immigrant and a prisoner of work. I recognize Joseph Wilson, a poor man who sweat daily for money in a building that was fireproof, but he wasn't. I recognize Joseph Wilson, a poor body that laid in a pile of corpse on the cold sidewalk. Where he lived is now a park, his name now written in chalk by many on the same cold sidewalk. I recognize Joseph Wilson as a poor hero who voicelessly caused changes to labor practices for his fellow workers. This tragedy really touches me deeply, and before this class I had no knowledge of this story. I'm an immigrant in America and can identify with some of the things in this story. I'm a seamstress and I've been sewing since I was 4 years old. My mother had a clothing factory that made babies' clothing. I also remember myself sewing on the sewing machine, but only at home. Not in the factory that she never made me visit, so I had no idea what the conditions were inside. The sewing machine means a lot to me, as it brings me joy just sitting there sewing away, changing broken needles, refilling bobbin threads, getting frustrated when my thread breaking, but it's okay. It's still my joy. I have 4 of them here with me at home. I still sew, and for someone who enjoys sewing, it saddens me that my dear sewing machine is the center of such a tragedy. After this, I will never look at my sewing machine the same way again. I will continue sewing for Joseph Wilson to keep his legacy alive. I brought my son to America for a better life, like all other immigrants. My son could have been Joseph Wilson, but luckily he wasn't, and we never had to be subjected to working in sweatshops. As we commemorate the Triangle Shirtwaist fire, naming becomes an integral part of how we want to remember the victims and provide a specific connection to someone and their life. Since Joseph Wilson has been embedded in my thinking, I can't help but imagine his day-to-day life, his family, what he did for fun, his friends, and sadly what he went through before he died. There's an intricate way in which memories and storytelling are preserved, which helps to create a visual, almost like the modern day metaverse that puts you in the moment next to Joseph Wilson as if it was still unfolding. I think about, like, did he jump? Did he collapse with the one fire exit that existed, or was he trapped in one of the many bulky sewing machines with a sewing needle that was heaven sent? It's just so sad when you just think of this story. His death, like the others, caused basic human rights to be recognized for working class people. Rituals of Spring did not talk much about Joseph Wilson, so I will. Hardly anyone has seen where males are never usually associated with sewing and those kinds of occupations, so obviously more girls perish in the fire. There was no spring mentioned for Joseph Wilson, but nevertheless he is one of many historical names linked with workplace tragedies, which showed how America has failed to protect workers. Today, this tragedy has left a fire burning in the mouth of many descendants, advocates, and onlookers, as composer Julia Wolf stated in her 2009 musical work. Memories are what strengthens us to understand the event. We all have to keep remembering and reminding ourselves about Joseph Wilson and what the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire means to us as workers today. It's an unfinished story. Some may say it re traumatizes us, but still, there's much to be gained from understanding the historical content of how Joseph Wilson and other immigrants and low income earners have been treated over time in America. All these tragedies are just a never ending pattern in America to continually depreciate human lives. So the question is asked, how does the past shapes the future? It does, but not always in a positive way. As we look at the many workplace tragedies since the Triangle Fire, Joseph Wilson has caused changes to labor laws for higher wages, safer working conditions, ban on child labor. But the problem that led to the fire have not gone away. Inhumanity and criminality against human workers continues all in the name of profit, power, and greed. And I ask, why does America continue to disappoint Joseph Wilson? We have to put into context what we are memorializing. Let us not think of it as just honoring the lives of the people that died through naming, but it must be seen as keeping the fight and the fire burning for a permanent turning point in our labor practices. Who would think that poor immigrants like Joseph Wilson would have such a profound effect in America and all over the world? Memorialization has not fixed the problem. However, I do understand the reason why it is done. The question is, do commemorizations re-traumatize or strengthens us? I believe it truly strengthens us to remember the victims and to act as a reminder of the horrific events, keeping us hopeful that it will influence significant changes. It never ever goes that way though, as we see history repeating itself with similar workplace fires and tragedies and the continued disgust towards immigrants and low income earners. Let us keep raising the dead through repetition of their names and repeat the story loud and forever, just keeping them alive for as long as we can. Thank you so much for listening.